Is Sweden beating the rest of the world in terms of beating the coronavirus? It may be too early to tell, but right now it seems like the answer to that question is yes. In fact, Sweden is crushing it. In the month of August, only one death has been reported in the entire country from coronavirus. Remember, Sweden was a country that had no lockdowns, no shutdowns of the economy, and does not require wearing face masks. So what is Sweden doing that the rest of the world isn't doing right? We'll tell you right now. I'm Ben Swann, and this is Truth in Media. Hey guys, welcome to the show. So today we're going to talk about Sweden absolutely crushing it in terms of their coronavirus numbers. And again, it may be too early to tell long-term whether or not Sweden's strategy worked. But so far, if you look at what we call trending or trends when it comes to the coronavirus, Sweden seems to be doing better than just about every other place in the world, especially the United States. So we're going to talk about exactly what those numbers look like. Before we do, though, a quick shout out to our sponsor for this episode, Create Tailwind, createtailwind.com. Create Tailwind is a way of learning the process of banking yourself, the way that Fortune 500 companies do, the way that high net worth individuals do. Bob Burnett and Jim Oliver will teach you the concept of infinite banking. It's an Austrian economics idea based on banking yourself as opposed to using banks in a traditional way. It's a fascinating concept. If you want to learn more about it right now, in the link in the description below, you're going to find a link to our 25-minute interview where Jim and Bob explain in detail how infinite banking works. And to learn more, check out their website, createtailwind.com. All right, so talking about what's happening in Sweden right now, it is really a remarkable story because that country, even though it was mocked by the rest of the world, even though Sweden has come under a lot of criticism from countries like the WHO and other countries in Europe and even people here in the United States, Sweden has remained steadfast in a couple of factors. Number one, Sweden decided against economic lockdowns when the rest of the world was shutting down businesses. Sweden has also resisted the wearing of face masks. They have not mandated face masks for their population. So we talked about Sweden taking these steps of having no lockdown a few weeks ago, and yet media constantly criticized the country, saying that they were essentially putting people in harm's way and threatening the lives of people. And yet the numbers now show that Sweden's strategy may be paying off in a very big way. In fact, the numbers behind cases and deaths in Sweden has fallen dramatically, not a little bit, dramatically, every single month since the spring. Take a look at these numbers. The deaths attributed to COVID-19 went from about a 50% reduction to falling off of a cliff. In April, there were 2,572 deaths attributed to COVID. In May, that number dropped to 1,646. In June, it dropped again to 805 deaths. In July, Sweden reported just 226 deaths. And now in August, Sweden has registered just one death with or from the coronavirus. Yes, you read that correctly, just one death so far. And the story is the same in the hospitals. COVID-19 is hardly registering as a blip on the radar. Sweden has reported just four new COVID-19 patients in their ICUs in August. The month of July saw only 52 COVID-19 patients in ICUs. Again, these numbers are absolutely remarkable, but what's really remarkable about them is that when Sweden first imposed the strategy of saying no economic lockdowns and we're not going to require face masks, they were mocked around the world by institutions like the WHO and by health experts around the world saying that they were making a huge mistake. Here we are just months later, and Sweden has done the exact opposite of what other countries are seeing. We are getting in the United States reports of a constant rise in coronavirus cases and a surge in coronavirus deaths, which as a result of those numbers, if you believe them, and I think there's a lot of questions about those numbers, if you believe them, indicates that the US is trending in the wrong direction. Too many cases, too many people getting it, and that's calling for politicians to insist on more lockdowns, more shutdowns of the economy, not returning kids to school in the fall, and actually mandating face masks for everyone in the country. And yet Sweden went in the exact opposite direction. In fact, they never mandated face masks. So how does Sweden compare to other nations in Europe who have also dealt with high numbers of coronavirus? Because early on in this pandemic, Sweden did have high death rates, but of course those numbers have dropped off. But let's compare them to other nations. As of Sunday, the latest death rate in Sweden, deaths per 100,000 people, was reported to be 56.40. The figure is lower than that reported in the UK, Spain, and Italy, according to the latest report Sunday by Johns Hopkins University. Sweden's latest case fatality ratio, portion of deaths compared to total cases, was reported to be 7.1%. The figure is more than half the percentage reported in the UK at 15.1%, half of that of Italy and Belgium, each reporting 14.2%, and nearly half that of France, 13.4%. And it should be mentioned that that is according to Newsweek. That is certainly no fan of this idea of not imposing lockdowns. But what is so important about these numbers is not just that Sweden is outperforming other nations in terms of death rate now, and in terms of not seeing a second wave. But there is a bigger issue here too, which is that of Sweden not falling into the trap of destroying their own economy as a result of these terrible, misguided measures. In fact, what we're finding is Sweden's economy is doing better than just about every neighboring nation in Northern Europe. Sweden's GDP fell 8.6% in Q2 2020, the country's worst quarterly decline in modern history. The fall came amid the novel coronavirus panic, which Sweden did not implement full lockdown measures over. However, the Scandinavian nation markedly outperformed the rest of Europe. Its GDP drop in the second quarter was lower than the 12.1% average experienced in the Eurozone, as well as the 11.9% average across the whole EU. Sweden outperformed several European countries, including Spain, France, Italy, and Germany. And based on its numbers, Sweden, unlike other countries in Europe and the United States, is not in a recession. They have not had 2 quarters of GDP decline, which is required in order to be officially in a recession. Look, the point of this story is very simple. Sweden has acted in a way that bucks the trend of the rest of the world, and has acted in a way that recognizes that the coronavirus is not more severe than many other viruses in history. They did not institute draconian measures. They have not instituted face mask mandatory laws. They have not butchered and destroyed their economy. And they have not set up their population to say, you will all be trapped until a vaccine comes that we can force on you. Sweden has acted as an exception to the rule. And as a result of that, what we are seeing is very simple. Sweden outperforming the rest of the world economically, as a result of the coronavirus, medically, and in terms of fatalities. And that is something worth paying attention to. Those who are in authority here in the US should give heed to what Sweden has done. They have acted in a cool, calm, and collected manner, and as a result, their people are doing much better than people all around the world, including right here in the US. Hey, by the way, before we go, please check out our new platform, ise.media. We have incredible content being uploaded there over the next few weeks. Content creators who are being pushed off of other sites around the world, tech sites like Facebook and Amazon and YouTube, being told their content cannot be there. Well, we are providing a place for them to be. And we are, by the way, running an equity crowdfunding campaign. Be a part of the solution to big tech censorship across the internet. And become an investor. Help us to build the next great technological company that truly believes in free speech.